I have in the first hour one of my favorite people and literally a living legend. I know this will embarrass Joe when I say this, but Joe Trippi is a legendary Democratic strategist. He literally invented the modern internet-based campaigns with Howard Dean. He has a great Walter Mondale story, which since we have people living on the border, I hope you'll share your Walter Mondale story because I love it. And we're going to talk about New Hampshire. So, Joe, welcome aboard. Glad to have you on.
Great to be with you, Trig.
Um, so Joe, it's New Hampshire primary day. And I think I want to start off because I know you and I have been on enough other calls and conversations about what we think's going to happen. But I'd like you to walk through a little bit how you see this playing out, and then let's start from sort of the perceptions of what this means for the Republican Party going forward, and then let's talk a little bit about what it means for the Biden campaign.
Well, I mean, first off, no one knows what's happening in New Hampshire today. It seems like there's less energy and less of a turnout. I'm hearing from people I'm talking to on the ground that it's just not the record turnout they were expecting or that the Secretary of State predicted. But we'll see. It's still early in the day. Um, but so you could get anything. I was there uh, twice. I've had, I went in with Vice President Walter Mondale, as you talked about. We had just won Iowa 49-17, and we're way ahead in the polls in New Hampshire. And the next, week later, election day happens, and we get creamed, and no one saw it coming. Not in the volume that Gary Hart beat us by in New Hampshire that year. And then you go into uh, 2008, every public poll had, after Obama won Iowa, had him. I think all the public polls had him ahead by 15. I think our internals had him ahead by 18. And the next day, Hillary came back and beat him. So, and that's happened on both sides of the aisle. I'm just talking about from my real life experiences there on my side. So you can't. It's even though a lot of polls show Trump widening his lead in the last few days, it could be true, could be real. On the other hand, waking up and finding later on tonight, a few hours from now, finding out that Dixville Notch actually, when it went 6-zip for Haley, the state won't do that. As Governor Chris Sununu joked today, he promised that it wouldn't be 398,000 to zero
Right.
after that result. But so I don't know. The one thing, though, that I was a little surprised by, not the first part of this, what I'm going to say is that Nikki Haley had the second worst 10 to 15 last days of Iowa of any candidate I've ever seen. And the first worst was my guy Howard Dean in 2004. That's how. So it would have been a kind of tough hill to climb to have a worse week than him, or worse couple of weeks than him. But I mean, she starts talking about how New Hampshire will correct correct the mistake you make here in Iowa, with something to that effect. It starts there, the slavery stuff. She just had, a 10 or 15-day period when she needed to keep the momentum going in there to get past DeSantis, and kind of gaffed her way into third place, what I thought would have been a second for her. That, of course, and her inability to capitalize on, one, she didn't get a second place, and then third, the way they handled it, that third place, and didn't really roll into New Hampshire on fire, I think makes me think that that Trump is going to end up winning it, and potentially by a significant margin. But the thing I think so far, at least, that's been more fascinating about the two states, um, is that I think it's exposing, aside from winnowing the field down, and which is always something Iowa and New Hampshire do. They made it, winnow it down to, Iowa winnowed it down to 2, and maybe, we'll see whether Nikki Haley has enough oomph in her results today to move on. I think she will. I think she'll stay in through South Carolina, and that's a long month for her and Trump to debate. or at least fight. But I think the most significant thing is when you look at the Iowa results, Trump rolled in the rural areas. We knew that was going to happen, but he
Mhm.
had big problems in the cities in Des Moines and Johnson County, where Nikki Haley beat him, yes, by one vote, but she beat him, and he was only in the 30s there. These are kind of suburban and in inner, city. And by the way, these are all Republicans. This isn't in Iowa. You don't have Democrats or independents voting in the Republican caucuses. Um, and you have to be pretty diehard to come out because, as we know, it's a long process. He was having trouble, getting above 40 in a lot of the cities
Well, I
and in the
think
burbs.
and so it's interesting to me. We're obviously here in Wisconsin today. Um, the path of the presidential campaign, right, starts in Iowa, goes to New Hampshire, which is what we're going to see today, and then it ultimately really leads to Michigan and Wisconsin in
Right.
the end, right? And it was really interesting. You may not know this. Kamala Harris was the vice president, was in Waukesha talking about reproductive rights yesterday,
Yeah.
and uh, that is not, as somebody who's run a lot of campaigns in Wisconsin, that's not typically someplace a Democrat would go to talk about those kinds of issues. But I do think we've already seen some vulnerabilities, kind of like you're talking about
Right.
in Iowa, that are opening up some spaces for
Well,
Democrats to talk, if they can do it, articulated in a way that, what we call Dobbs dads and Red Dawn conservatives will
right.
resonate with them. These conservatives who have been placing democracy over partisanship and who are likely to be
Well,
backing Nikki Haley, there's an opportunity there.
yeah, and that's what I think. That's what I'm saying. I think the vulnerability that you saw in the suburbs of Des Moines and in the cities of Iowa, where again these are Republicans. These are the kinds of Republicans that Trump needs to hold, and you see his weakness there that I think Haley and DeSantis both exposed. And now you get to New Hampshire, and regardless of what the result is tonight, the most important thing to look at, the most important thing about New Hampshire always is where did the independents go? What did they decide to do? I mean, this is a test. So Iowa can test you within the party, and then you get to New Hampshire and you see whether you can grow outside of that or not. So one weakness in the party in the burbs, she exposes that, and DeSantis exposes that in Iowa. Now you get to New Hampshire, and all the polls, even the ones that show uh, Trump beating her by a good margin, show that she's killing him
Right.
with independents, Republican leaning independents in particular. And I think those are the two groups that Trump needs. I mean, that is the Bannon line. I mean, and it's widening, and you're seeing it. And that's what I'm going to be looking for tonight. Is what happened. Look, so far, what's going on is I think it's proving that 50% of Iowans are Iowa GOP. Uh, MAGA can deliver 50% to him in Iowa and maybe 60 or over in New Hampshire. But that's not enough, not when you're losing or having the struggles that he's having in the suburbs with Republicans. And then if tonight Nikki Haley again shows a weakness that he has with independents, these are the two groups that enough of them broke away and voted for Biden in 2020, and enough of them broke away and stopped the red wave from happening because of Dobbs and other things supporting Democrats in 2022. And so I think that's going to be. It just seems, Trig, you're right. I just think that so far, just whatever the margin is, I think you're starting to see real weaknesses that Trump is going to have in the general election, or at least places that can be exploited and leveraged and wedged away from to get people to move who have already she's already uh, moved people away from him in the primaries, and we'll see how long that lasts. But I think it's definitely exposed a weakness that can continue in the general election with Biden.
We have about a minute left. I think you're hitting on a really important point. I think, for those, whether you're a Republican, former Republican like I am, like Todd Albaugh is, or you're a Democrat like Joe is, if you're really concerned about democracy, um, you you have to be happy about this, whether you like Nikki Haley or don't like Nikki Haley, or you're troubled by her appeasement of Donald Trump when he was elected. Her criticism of Trump, which you have to understand for those of you who are watching this who are concerned about it, is her criticisms of Trump seem to be forcing Trump into some unforced errors. I mean, this confusing her with Nancy Pelosi, right? Like those things matter. We have about a minute left in this segment. Joe, touch on just briefly, as the guy who's been in the room where it's happening. What are you doing? What were you doing on these days? When you were running a campaign, somebody's campaign in New Hampshire, and you got, it's election day. What was your day like? Just quick.
Well, we'll
Oh,
get to
we'll
that
do it
next
on the other
segment.
side.
Yeah.
I ran out of time. We'll get that on the other side. I'm Trigby Olson. You're listening to the Todd Albaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Welcome back to the Todd Albaugh Show on Civic Media. We're pursuing truth wherever it may lead. As Tony pointed out, I am not Todd Albaugh. I am Trigby Olson, your guest host today. I am being co-piloted by the Aaron Zomers, for the best in the business, running the board. And we have Joe Trippi, legendary Democratic strategist and a colleague of mine at the Lincoln Project, who is joining us today to talk a little bit about what's happening in New Hampshire, which is what we were talking about before the break. We're also going to talk a little bit about what that means for Wisconsin. As I said it before, what we're seeing in Iowa and New Hampshire is the beginning of a process. That process leads straight through here to the state of Wisconsin in many ways, because Joe, I think people would be interested in your take on this. I'm of the belief, as Wisconsin goes, that's how the Electoral College is going to go. It's the tipping
Yeah.
point state. So, what do you think? Trump has. We were talking during the break. Trump looks tired. He's obviously been making some pretty big mistakes when you're confusing Nancy Pelosi and Nikki Haley. That you're not winning. Where do you think that leads? Like, he needs the primary to get over fast, don't you think? Because
Yeah,
the more
I
he's out there, the bigger the problem.
yeah, no, I definitely think that's right. I think Nikki Haley, he didn't want to have to work this hard. He is tired, and you can tell that he wants to end it. And obviously, he wants to end it so he can get on with the general election and all that stuff. But I think he wants to end it because he don't want to keep this pace, and he can't keep the pace up, and that's why I think that Haley's. Hopefully, I think from a perspective of democracy, hopefully keeps the chase up a little longer to wear him down, because he's clearly gaffing, slurring, making mistakes, and they're having to have him out there a lot longer than he wants to be out there, and longer than his people would want him out there right now.
Yeah, and the thing is, and one of the things you and I share in common, which is one of the things I enjoy so much about you and I getting to be not only colleagues, but the fact that we've gotten to be really good friends, is we've worked around the world on a lot of campaigns. I think one of the things that I've discovered to be true is, when you have candidates who have served as chief executives, you've been president of the United States like Donald Trump, or any country. Um, you don't like to get criticized, because when you're in those offices, you have very few people who speak the truth to you. And when you have to get out on the campaign trail, or you have to go to debates, you're going to get criticized. And I think some of what we're seeing is that exhaustion on Trump is just the fact he is not used to having somebody calling him out and questioning him. And the idea that it's somebody who, quite frankly, served in his
Right.
administration is probably really getting under his skin.
Well, you're right about all of them, but two, then in Donald Trump in particular,
Right.
doesn't like to get criticized, will always go on the attack. I mean, that's what I think is going to be interesting about, if she doesn't get out. Let's say he beats her by 20 something points, and she doesn't get out. It's on to South Carolina. I you know he his re, I mean, People are saying, well, what happens? What's his reaction going to be if she beats him? Well, we can all kind of figure that one out. It won't be pretty. But I even wonder what happens if he does beat her by strong double digits, and she just says, no, I'm going on. We're fighting. I'm not backing down to you. How he handles that? I mean, because of the exhaustion, because he doesn't, he doesn't feel like he deserves this kind of treatment from somebody he appointed, and so I think it's likely that regardless of the result tonight, we're going to continue to see this tired, fumbling, kind of scrambling word slurring Donald Trump. I
Right.
think to that extent, how long can she keep that going? I mean, it's all you and I talked about this, Trig. No one gets out of these things because they just wake up and say, I don't want to run for president today. There's only one. They don't even get out when you show them polls that say like you're down by 30 points, you can't win. The only thing that gets anybody out, and DeSantis proves this point, the only thing is the killer shot is when you run out of money. That's
Yeah.
when you finally. So she's got, I think, about 8 million on hand. I think another 500,000 came in yesterday. If she has a decent result tonight, I think more of that'll continue to come from people who want to, want to see her go all the way to at least South Carolina a month from now. And so I think it is possible that she keeps on, and that this is a month of Trump having to answer, or attack back and forth. And I think there's always the chance that he could we know, not a chance, he will say or do something that I think might drive even more particularly Republican women and Dobbs dads and Red Dons into thinking, hey, I'm done with this.
So we got 3 minutes left, and then I know you got to go. I want to pivot into something. So you are, and I don't say this to embarrass you. You know, you're an iconic figure in Democratic politics, and you've worked for a lot of progressives, which is, you and I are a testament to that. You can set stuff aside for democracy, given that we
Right.
work for very different kind of people. But we're here in Madison, Wisconsin, one of the iconic places of the progressive movement, quite frankly, in
Yeah.
America. There's a lot of younger voters listening. What would you say to them, the ones that are concerned about Biden and are thinking about Robert Kennedy Jr. or thinking about, well, I don't know if I'm going to vote, or because there is a fair amount of that around, and I think you and I've had enough conversations. Give your little pitch about why this is so key.
Well, look, I did that. I'm with you. I did it. I was one of you guys in 1979, 1980 when I worked for Ted Kennedy. And we challenged Jimmy Carter in his primary and literally destroyed any chance he had of, of beating Reagan in 1980. Why? Because he wasn't progressive enough. Um, we, and I was an idealistic, progressive young person who said, no, I'm going to stand on principle, I'll fight for what I believe in. And I learned that lesson the hard way. What we got was 8 years of Ronald Reagan. I'm talking now as a progressive Democrat to progressives. We got 8 years of Ronald Reagan and 4 years of George Herbert Walker Bush. All the things that I had wanted to fight for as a progressive were delayed by 12 years. This is much different. This is we're not, Reagan and Bush, you could argue, and I know progressives despise those 12 years. But if you think that was bad, wait till you have Donald Trump back in the White House, and potentially not leaving if he has anything to do with it. Um, Anything that you believe that you wanted to see happen on climate change, on freedom of whether it's women's reproductive health, or even things like contraceptives and other. I mean, just a whole host of things that will go out. That all the things that progressives don't believe that Biden didn't do enough for this, or he didn't do enough on that. Well, first of all, he did as much. He did a hell of a lot given the obstruction of the Republican Party, particularly in the House, of stopping anything anytime they could get it. So I think you can learn that lesson or repeat it. I'm hoping you won't repeat it.
Joe, thank you so much for coming on and doing this. This is the Civic Media Radio Network and the Todd Abaugh Show. We'll be back.